Well, good morning and welcome back to the channel again. I'm glad that you tuned in for another episode of the Elusive Lens Photography. A thought hit me this past week on the nature of the photographic beauty. There are thousands of photographers around the world. There are hundreds of thousands, if not more, of locations that are worth shooting and that people actually shoot. There are various levels among the photographers, from the beginner to expert professionals. And I by far do not consider myself a professional, even though I've been shooting uh, for a few years now. But as I was looking back at the photos I took a few years ago with, I think it was Canon Rebel T6, what made me think was how differently we see things as we grow as a photographer. And that phrase, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, kept coming back. As a matter of fact, I mentioned that to one of the subscribers on this channel, that you basically just grab your camera, go out in the field, go out in the town or wherever you live, and you will find things that appeal to you, that are beautiful to you. And that advice is true to an extent. And what I mean by that is that at least makes you engage in the activity of photographing something. It is almost like you take up painting. Uh, and one of my girls would bring me a drawing, and it's cute, but you and I would agree it's not Michelangelo. And yet you would not discourage. You would encourage the effort. And the older, the more they develop in that particular skill, uh, you may even give them a certain pointers. And I'm referring, of course, not to uh, painting, but to photography. So as you grow, you learn. You learn from others. You learn from your own mistakes. Um, and you can actually now point out things that would make an image more appealing to the general public's eye, where if they glanced at that image, they would go, wow, that is a great looking photo. Versus if you maybe are a beginner, they would be polite not to say anything, but at the same time, they would not acknowledge that this is an outstanding photo. So to go back to the beauty in the eye of the beholder, my advice, if you're just starting out, that is an absolute truth. Go find things that appeal to you, that you find amazing. It might be a macro shot. It might be a twig of grass or a patch of grass sticking out of a patch of snow. And I say just go ahead and try it. But also start looking at the photos of people that have been using their cameras and techniques in various ways for many years, and start observing. It will open your eyes to what most people would consider appealing visually. And you will notice there are certain things about landscape, there are certain things about portraits, whatever your field of interest when it comes to photography, uh, you may choose to learn from others, whether it's in books, whether it's in videos, about what makes a photo beautiful. And I'm going to run through a couple of shots here, just a series of photos from back when I started. And these photos did not appear, most of them, in any of my videos yet. So I wanted to show what I felt like was beautiful back when I started shooting, and what now, under the circumstances of the general public and through this channel, I wanted to show you the progression um, that I experienced personally as a photographer, and what I find uh, beauty, I know has changed in several years since I started shooting first. And I would love to hear your feedback on in the comments down below, how you have progressed as a photographer, what level you're at, what are your aspirations. I think it is one of those fields where it's not an exact science and we grow at our own pace. It's not a math, it's not physics, it is photography. And so I think we can grow together um, at our own pace. And so here's the set of photos that I would like to um, go over and just show you what I end up finding and seeing as beautiful as I developed as a photographer. At first glance, looking at some of those earlier images, one would almost guess that a monkey got hold of the camera. I'm joking, of course, but still, it seems as if I was using an over-the-counter point-and-shoot camera. There was absolutely no consistency in composition or the use of light. I had no understanding of basic techniques of photography, of symmetry, of focal length application. I attempted to be creative by taking photos from very strange angles of a variety of subjects, which resulted in family scrapbook-style pictures rather than a photographer's portfolio. The great thing, though, is that I didn't know how bad I was. It was simply a very satisfying hobby. Then later I joined an online photography club and things began to change little by little. I participated in competitions and was exposed to some really accomplished photographers. I began reading and watching educational materials. I was becoming more conscious of how my images compared to other people's work. I also noticed I started taking fewer photos as it was harder to find compositions, but those few were taken with a deliberate purpose and for specific reasons. From capturing the vibrant colors of the golden hour to catching that moody moment or focus stacking that open landscape scene. In short, it was an obvious learning progression. As a result, my later images were reflective of that. Okay, so as you can see, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, just to recap this whole episode. Uh, and yet, it is more applicable to the amateur beginner stage of one's photographic skill. Because people who have practiced this skill of photography for several years, you can recognize certain elements in their photos that make it more visually appealing. The choice of the foreground, whether they allow too much empty space in the sky when they're doing landscape, the way they frame their portraits, the sharpness of the macro images, the rule of thirds, all of these little techniques that come along the way as now you begin to also learn and you now notice those. So it's a relative statement. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I would love to hear back in the comments as how you recognize yourself growing as a photographer. Have you noticed that progression? I thought this would be an interesting subject to touch on. And to me, it was interesting also to look at my images and that progression development of what I found beautiful throughout the years. So thank you very much again for staying as long on this video as you have and allowed me to ramble on. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and if you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button and ring that bell so you're notified next time when the video comes out. And I would appreciate if you shared this content with your friends on other platforms. And I hope to see you back in the next episode. Have a great week. Bye.